Can you define the difference between a guideline and a policy for us?
Right, a guide. So policies are our graduation requirements are listed in there, and so we are often trying to figure out which courses students can take to figure that part out. And so every detail is not figured out as we set a policy. So we will often have counselors come to us and say, okay, how do we do this? What is, I mean, this is the policy. How do we go forth and make this happen? What are the details of it? Because if you've ever spoken to a high school counselor, they have a gazillion problems they bring up that come up that we didn't anticipate in the policy. So we're trying to figure out the guidelines for that. Let us to have consistent application of what we think will achieve the board policy.
Would it be fair to say a guideline is a suggestion?
Well, what we want to do is be consistent with all of our schools. And so we try to apply those guidelines consistently across, in this case, all 4 high schools.
Sure, but the guideline is not a policy, it's a suggestion for the students.
We want to, it can be more than that. It can be how we interpret that. And if the board disagrees with that,
sure,
they can bring it part of the policy and say, we prefer to do it this way.
So, but if it's a guideline and it didn't come before the board, this is something that was created by outside of the board, and there are many things that happen that way. Those are still just suggestions to how to do things as opposed to a policy that dictates this is how you do things.
The policy is intended to create the overall structure for how something is supposed to happen, and then the staff figures out how to apply that policy evenly across the schools.
Okay, and this is a guideline that we're talking about. You're trying to make it a policy in the graduation requirements.
Right. I think there's been enough concern raised about this that we should clarify it, bring it to the board's attention, and see where we go from there.
Okay.
So this has actually been said that this is now a policy, because I have an email that says the PYLUSD impacted schedule policy, and it was created on 2/17 of 2023. And that is not on a day of a board meeting. And that was done without the board. So I think what Trustee Frazier is trying to say is, we have now said that this is a policy because you have put it out to our teachers, staff, parents as a policy that didn't go before the board. So when are we now breaking board policy by enacting board policies or saying that they're board policies and creating without board approval? Because this is impact. I mean, this has caused chaos, absolute chaos throughout this school. And so here we have that this was created on 2/17. Did you vote on anything on 2/17? I didn't.
No. This has never been a board policy.
Sure. But it said PYLUSD impacted schedule policy. So you guys are saying to people this is a policy, but then when you come in here and say that, well, these are only guidelines, and then all of these kids have lost out now. They've gone through Esperanza, the junior class. They have been told they cannot take government or econ over the summertime. I just got a text message from someone that said, my daughter's in Yorba Linda High School. She is in 0 period band, yearbook, and soccer. With all other core classes she had to take, health and careers over the summer. She wanted to do the same classes next year, but her schedule is too impacted, so she has to drop something. So she is dropping soccer in order to stay in band and yearbook. Not what she wanted to do, but yearbook will lose all but 4 current students because of this. So there's five students in one class because this is impacted. And so my concern is that there's been so much misinformation. We've been told that the teachers and the union brought this forward. And then we were told as a board, the teachers and the union brought this forward. The union says they had nothing to do with it. And so where did this come from? Where did this start? And we need to be honest as to where this came from, because you can't give the union a bad rap saying that the union brought this forward, but it was outside negotiation. And you can't, the teachers are brought forward, or is this just done internally behind everybody's back? Because this is not transparent whatsoever.
Yeah, again, when you talk about policies, there's ASBs set policies for dances. Sport teams set policies for how they operate as well. There's so many different organizations that set policies for us. A board policy is a board policy. Everything else operates from within those. And so when a board policy is created, that is what must be followed. And so again, if the board wants to do that, that's great. But what we do is when this policy was created because our counselors wanted consistency on how we did that. So we were meeting with our counselors and figuring out how we do it. If the board disagrees with it, it is your right to set a policy where you describe that more fully. And so we're going to take, I mean, again, there are so many details that if we brought all those details to the board for every meeting, you'd be meeting every day. We have to have the ability to interpret policy and go forth with it. And again, if the board sees a problem with it, bring it back and make it part of the board policy.
I've still never heard of like a problem that we're solving. That's and we had the conversation.
Right.
There's not really a problem. It's just a preference that these classes in the summer are not as robust as during the school year. But there's not a true problem that we're solving by limiting the kids taking summer school. Is that correct?
The only problem we're creating is that,
You mean solving?
the TA is a good,
You're creating problems. I don't think
the TA is a good example. I mean, I really believe that one of our courses is a better schedule than a TA. I do believe that. And so where is the line that we draw? I love the schedule with 4 arts classes in it, but is that worth not taking a academic class to get those 4 electives in there? That's the hard line to draw.
I think the problem that we have here is that it was said it went from 200 or 300 kids, the original intent in 2015, and then now you have 1,200 kids taking these classes. So now you have kids that were in 8th grade that are trying to go into 9th grade to take a health class. And it is impacting it's impacting hundreds of students. Just in this one text message, it was impacting 5 students. And so why are we doing this? First of all, where did this come from? And like what Todd said, what is this solving? Because these kids have a right. If you want to go take 0 period and take yearbook and you want to be an athlete and you want to be an ASB and you need to take a couple summer school classes to be able to make that work, why would anybody stand in the way? We are trying to bring out so many well-rounded students. And by doing this, like you're saying, you can only if you're doing what we deem is good. This is the only way that you guys can go forward with these impacted schedules. I mean, so we're really going to take away like 600-800, of these students' schedules. They're going to be impacted. Because, I mean, you just said that it went up to 1,200 was accessing all of these summer school classes, and so they could take additional classes. And so not everybody, I know you said that the number is low, but not everybody has come and complained to the district. They're complaining to us. And a lot of kids just went in there to their counselor and they were just told, nope, you can't take that class this next year. You can't do the summer school class, so you have to go drop something. And they haven't necessarily reported to the district, but they reported it to us. They report it to their counselors. And it's just not fair and it's not right. And I don't see how you can go forward. And it was like nobody knew anything. Like who decided to start this? Like who brought this forward? Where was this committee? Who was involved on the committee? And why was the board kept out when you have hundreds of students that are impacted and it just causes chaos? Like that's where we want the questions. That's where the audience, people in the audience, people at home, they want to know why this was started, all these kids were impacted, and the board was left out. Because it kind of seems like we get reoccurring instances where the board is left out of a lot of decisions, and then it starts, stuff starts to catch on fire, and like we're here putting out the flames. And so here we are with all of these kids who have had to make these decisions. Well, now I have to give up soccer my senior year. Well, that's not fair to make a kid give up soccer because you guys wanted to change something around. It's not fair and it's not right. And so we need some more transparency from the district because, like, look at where we're at. Now are you going to send all of these kids back to the counselor? 8th grade through 11th? Are we sending them back all to the counselors and say, you know what, your schedule is not going to be, if we vote a different way tonight, like, we have to go back and fix it all?
We don't think there'd be that many to fix, but that's exactly what we would do.
Okay.
I think the issue before you tonight is some of you don't like the way the policy we've been using. What do you want to do? Make a recommendation for a policy and let's have a discussion. We'll bring it back to you and we can move forward.
Well, if we're going to talk, so this is where it's getting muddy. You keep saying policy, but then you also are saying, what's the word?
Guidelines.
Guidelines.
We're setting a policy tonight.
I'm
let's
saying set a
the
board policy.
tonight. Okay.
Can I suggest that we just remove number 3 from this
Yes.
entirely? But without any limits on summer school, or do we need to make a statement about?
I think you need to
no
make a
limits?
statement on that. I think